of today. I invite you to tune in weekly to the show featuring leading voices from around the world. So whether you're here live or on replay, it doesn't matter. I love you. Make sure you say hi in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. All right, today we welcome international best-selling author Jay Samit to the Author's Spotlight. Described by Wired magazine as having the coolest job in the industry, Jay raises hundreds of millions of dollars for startups, advises Fortune 500 firms, transforms entire industries, revamps government institutions, and for 3 decades continues to be at the forefront of global trends. He's been called the guru for the entire industry. Wow. By Variety, and his list of partners and associates read like a who's who list of innovators, including Bill Gates, President Clinton, Pope John Paul II, Sir Richard Branson, just to name a few. I could go on and on and on, but let's just get to the show. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Jay.
Thanks for having me, Caren.
I am excited that you're here. We've been chatting our heads off before the show, talking about the past, and I'm just going to throw out, because we did the math, you and I have known each other for 33 years.
And as I said, that must have been first grade.
Exactly. It must have been first grade. If you have a question for Jay, by the way, make sure you put it in the comments and we will make sure that Jay answers it. So first off, congratulations on the launch of your book. How exciting. I'm thrilled for you. I see the book is right behind you on the shelf, but of course, I want to show it in the stream as well. This is your book, Future Proofing You. I love the title, 12 Truths for Creating Opportunity, Maximizing Wealth, and Controlling Your Destiny. So we're going to talk about the book, but before we talk about the book, let's jump in a little bit and talk about your story and how you became you. So we're not going to go all the way back to when you were 2, when we first met each other. What was the beginning of your journey?
So I bought into what society promised, that if you go to school and you get good grades, you live happily ever after. Mm-hmm. And when I came out of college, there was a thing called a recession. There were no jobs. And no one explained that. And I also decided to have kids when I was very young. So I looked down on my 2 small boys, and that was all the motivation I needed to say, I'm not giving up. So I don't, it's easy to look at the high notes, at the end of the thing, that I sat in an empty room and created companies that are billion-dollar companies that everybody uses. But what I got from that experience of doing it again and again is, if you would have told me that dozens of friends would become self-made billionaires with a B, I would have asked you what you were smoking. I didn't know what a millionaire was. So I've known all these people from before they were household names. I know that many of them not smarter than the average bear. I've done the research that having a high IQ doesn't make you wealthy. Having a 4-year degree doesn't make you wealthy. So if I can figure out how to teach people what it is and pay it forward, that's what my life's about. I'm not trying to monetize this. I'm not selling masterminds or, you can't buy a t-shirt. And so that's been my journey. And then the other side of it that I think is unique about my 2 books is I've also run the corporate side. I've been the heads of companies with hundreds of thousands of employees, sat in the C-suite, dealt with the politics and the bureaucracy. So I can understand how to communicate and sell to them. I can understand sitting in the empty room and creating something. And it's not that difficult. I'll give you the secret right off the bat. You only need 2 things to be successful: insight and perseverance. Everything else can be hired. So if I can teach people how to find insight, and if I can help them, which I do in Future Proofing You, to turn that perseverance into passion, then the world is yours.
I've heard you say that the more problems you have in your life, the more successful you'll be. I'm fascinated by that.
So many people think that entrepreneurs sell things. They don't. They solve things. If you solve the problem for 5 people, you have friends. Solve for 1 million, you make money. Solve for 1 billion, you change the world. So no one ever wanted to go into a hardware store and buy a 1/4-inch drill bit. What they wanted was a 1/4-inch hole. So find a problem and solve it. So if you have problems in your life, you're halfway there. Because obstacles are opportunities in disguise. If you don't have any problems, you will not be successful.
And that's such an out of the box kind of thinking. I'm sure that people who that the first time they go, what does that mean?
Because we have a couple of mythologies in our culture. One of the failing is bad.
Mm.
You cannot succeed without failing, because when you fail, you either earn or you learn. So that propels you further and further. If you think about a toddler doesn't wake up one day and go, today I shall walk across the room. They try, they stumble, right. Eventually they get it. If you play video games, it's the same thing. You don't sit down and make it to the end of the game. You hit this impossible obstacle, you hit it, and you get past it. That's all that a career or a business is. And there's always a solution.
So Bonnie says, relate to all of that as a founder. I created Go Lids doing just that. Amen. Thank you so much for participating. Jay, what do you think?
Oh, yeah. I know the product. It's really cool. It's how can you buy a sandwich and a drink at a ballpark with one hand? The sandwich is in the lid. Makes sense.
It totally makes sense. So Wall Street Journal writes that you are an intrapreneur and an entrepreneur and that you excel at both. Now, most people have heard the word an entrepreneur. What's an intrapreneur?
So no company, just once in my life, I like it to happen where a CEO or chairman calls me and said, we've just had our best year. Could you come in and help us do better? I'm the one that they call in when the company has a problem. And so how do you start? So best example was the music industry was doing fine for 100 years. Mm-hmm. The EMI, the world's biggest music company, they signed Enrico Caruso, the Beatles, Queen, you name it, Garth Brooks. And then Napster comes along and they lose half their business overnight and they're going to go out of business. That's when they called me to come in and can you find a solution? That's what I do. I've gone into startups. There was a startup that had blown through $8 million, had lifetime revenues of $30,000, and they had 1 month's payroll left.
Oh, wow.
18 months later, I sold it. The company was acquired by News Corp for $200 million. So it's about
we need you on every team,
changing and pivoting. And here's the other thing. The only competitive advantage you have in the 21st century with your business is getting insights from your customers faster than the competition.
Agreed. 100%.
Data is your friend. Data is your partner. It has no ego. Invite it to every meeting. I'll give you one of my fun go-to examples about this. So for the younger people watching, there was a time that dating happened before you knew how to swipe. So there was online computer dating, and 10 years ago, it was still pictures, and you read about the person. And when broadband was coming on, someone said, wait a second, I got a great idea. We'll do a website where videos, you can see the person's personality. It was called Tune In Hookup. 3 guys created the site. Brilliant business plan. They were going to make a fortune. The first video, just to describe it, and think back to your dating years, was a guy standing in front of the elephant cage at the zoo talking about why you should go out with him. So there was a tragic problem. Tune In Hookup, they built everything, they did everything right, but they got a bunch of losers. No one wanted to date these people. They were going to go out of business.
Right.
But they looked at the data, and the data told them something that wasn't in the business plan. Nobody wants to date these losers, but they sure want to share those videos with their friends. So they changed the name of Tune In Hookup to YouTube and became billionaires without a penny in revenue.
You heard it here. That I had never heard that story. That is awesome. That is awesome.
Most of the companies that most of the products you do came from pivoting, came from finding insights. Most ideas, and I touched on this in Disrupt You and talk about counterintuitive. If you have an idea for business, I'm almost willing to tell you without knowing it, and you're going to be shocked, that I think the idea sucks. It's a bad idea.
Right.
Okay? Because obvious ideas are not fully formed. So what you want to do is keep on finding every reason it doesn't work and plug every hole until you get a zombie idea, one that cannot be killed. And then it's easy to get that funded. Or you'll learn the same lessons if you go blow all your money and you didn't do your homework.
I totally agree with you. And it's very, very perceptive of what you're saying here. I mean, I agree. So we'll just leave it at that. You mentioned your book, your previous book, Disrupt You. It's in 13 languages, right? There you go.
So this year, not to brag, don't understand how connected this world has been. It comes out in Urdu, Icelandic, Polish. And if you have a book in your soul, I don't care what field, whatever, please write it, because it has been the most rewarding chapter of my life. Because when you're running a big company, I don't care what anybody wants to tell you, your inbox is, I hate you, this is on fire, we're suing, whatever. It's stress. When you hold up a mirror to people's souls, I don't actually do anything, but I show people how they can have the success that they want. Mm-hmm. My inbox is just love letters. I get, this changed my life. I couldn't support my family. This is going on. I even have one in Future Proofing You, and I asked her permission because I was so touched by it. But a woman in her mid-50s put all her money into her startup and lost it all. And she was committing suicide. And she called her daughter to say goodbye. And her daughter had a reaction she didn't expect. Her daughter was in her 20s. Her daughter laughed at her, not in a cruel way, in a, you're going to kill yourself over money? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard.
Wow.
You got to read this book. And she was writing to tell me that the book turned around her thinking. She now has a new business, a new career. She's having success. And that just pushes me to work harder. The genesis of this book came from an email that I got after Disrupt You saying, this is all motivational, but I could never do it.
So it's a how-to.
And I'm like, where did I miss? And yes, it's been a while since I was, a young person in their 20s. The world is different. What if I could figure that out? So I decided to put my name, reputation on the line. I found an immigrant who grew up on welfare, who was basically homeless, couch surfing, and I mentored him for a year. I gave him no capital. I didn't give him any contacts, no cheating on that. I didn't even tell him what business to start, but it had to be something that had no money involved. And he went, spoiler if you don't want to know the end of the book, he went from homeless to self-made millionaire in under a year. And I took those lessons down to 12 truths. And if you follow those 12 truths, you can have the same results.
Kim Castle says, one of my favorite quotes is, the future creates the now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll translate that in another way because, Kim, I like that. People think I'm successful or this or that, but I'll tell you something. I don't care what I'm trying to do. There's always going to be somebody better than me. There's always going to be somebody smarter than me. There's going to be somebody better connected, better funded, just plain old better looking. I hate that person. So my entire career has been, if I do something nobody else is doing, I have no competition.
There you go.
And if you're the only one doing it, by definition, you're the best in the world. So go do that and then fight to hold on to that turf that you created. And that's all that Vin did. If you want to know what his business was, your jaw's going to drop out. He grew up as a millennial. He thought he knew social media. He wanted to do social media for other people, like 40 million other people. Like, what are you going to get?
How is he going to stand apart? Right.
A kid on his own isn't going to get Coca-Cola saying, here's a big budget. Right? He knows people that'll pay him a couple $100. So said, look at what's in the zeitgeist. What are people talking about? What's something new? And make yourself the guy that does social media for that one little new niche.
Niche it down.
Get your first customer, even if you have to get them for free. And now you have what they call at MBA, fancy Harvard, a case study.
Right.
Now, so the people that were paying him $200 a week to do something in the January of that year, by March, he had customers paying for the same amount of work, paying him $30,000 a month. And they were happy and keeping on for on and on. And that's how this works. And there's always something new. And you don't have to be an engineer. He's not an engineer. Steve Jobs wrote the same amount of code as everybody listening to this conversation. Zippity and doodah, nothing. Insight, perseverance, everything else can be hired.
So we have a question. What is the most critical trait an entrepreneur needs today to future-proof themselves? Thanks, Kim.
So truth number one in the book, you have to have a growth mindset. So attitude is everything. If you see all those obstacles as problems and woe is me, my life is horrible. Oh, I'm stuck in traffic. Oh, I'm stuck in traffic. You won't get anywhere. Mm-hmm. But two kids were sitting in their car in Tel Aviv saying, I'm stuck in traffic, but the phone company knows where my phone is. If they tell me to go left and them to go right, that was Waze. They became billionaires, okay, with no revenue. So how do you get a growth mindset? So in the case of Vin, I didn't have the time to organically unpack everything that he was told in his life that he can't do. That's what Disrupt You is all about, to get those voices that say that you can't out. I had to get him hitting the ground running. And so I did something that he didn't find out till he got to read the book. Even though it's his story. In our first meeting, I lied to him. There's a psychological principle called the Pygmalion effect. A professor went to a school, tested all the kids, and told the teachers these 3 students would be super learners. They would achieve the most this year. At the end of the year, they test the whole school. Those 3 kids are the best. But the professor lied. He never looked at the first test. He picked 3 names out of a hat. But if you tell people they're special and you treat them special, they become special. So I told Vin, a lie, that I interviewed over 100 candidates and he was the only one that had all the attributes to be a self-made millionaire. And he didn't believe it, but he figured if this old dude that had success believes it, he'll go along with it. By the end of the first month, when he made $60,000, he could have flown to Europe without a plane. He had that growth mindset. He was convinced. And midway through the story, great twist in the book, and I don't know if I should give away, but his business got broadsided, sucker punch, something that had nothing to do with him. It could have been foreseen, but our world is constantly changing. And I figured he's down for the count, right? And that month's goal, he needed to make 100 grand, and his whole business done. So I go, okay, it'll be a book about a guy who makes $500,000, and it's still okay. So we come to the end of the month meeting, and he's, not happy. And he goes, I didn't make my target. I only made $96,000. And I'm like, could he go back in a time thing a year ago and say, would you ever be upset about only making $96,000? But when what was working so well for those first few months didn't work, he said, okay, I know that doesn't work. I'll try something else.
He pivoted.
He didn't miss a beat.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So we're talking to Jay Samit, if you're just tuning in, and we're talking about his new book, Future Proofing You. It launched today. I'm thrilled that you're launching it on the show today. There's a link to the book in the comments. And what makes this book so great is that you are actually showing people how they can do exactly what Vin did, right?
Yeah, so each chapter explains the 12 truths, and we can talk about some of the truths so people understand, because I didn't think I'm a contrarian thinker with a unique viewpoint to all this, but school basically taught you enough math and enough reading to work in a factory. They didn't foster your creative thinking. They didn't tell you to seek problem solving in the world.
Right.
And they still sell that myth from the 1950s where, one person can make an income. In the 1950s, the average house was 2 years' income. So that's why dad could work, mom didn't work.
Right.
And then they could retire to full pension, live happily ever after. Doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
After Disrupt You, I spent 5 years circumnavigating the globe, telling people whether by choice or circumstance, every career gets disrupted. I don't have to make that argument anymore. Mr. COVID proved that. Nobody's immune.
So when we were talking before, I asked you, did you write this book during the pandemic, or did this happen beforehand? And you said both. You actually...
So I did the experiment ahead of time. I didn't want to write the book not knowing whether, he was going to make it or not. And so I wrote it during the pandemic. Wiley, the publisher, I commend them that they can get a book out faster. My last book was with one of the big 3 publishers of the world. And from when I turned it in, they promised me it would come out in 18 months. Talk about stale information. And then they one day called me and said, we gave you a release date. Oprah's got a book coming out that we're doing. So we're pushing you back. So kudos to Wiley. They got it out fast, did a great job.
Right.
So to authors out there, it was a positive experience.
And it's on Amazon. You can get it Audible. You can get it on Kindle. You can get it, which you actually are the voice on Kindle.
Yeah, so if my voice isn't annoying you, this is what you're going to hear. I asked readers, did they want to have a professional, hi, I'm the FM voice, would you like to hear this book? Or do you want to hear from the actual writer? And overwhelmingly, people said they wanted to hear from the writer. So,
and I get that. I'm C. Shaw. I'm sure that is a name there, but great stuff. What if your passion doesn't align with your niche?
Good question. It does. It doesn't have to be this. I want to help people get fit, so I'm going to be, an exercise guy. Or one of my best friends had her teeth knocked out as a child. And when the dentist gave her new teeth, she knew the rest of her life she wanted to be a dental surgeon, and she still is. I envy people like that knew what they wanted to be. But there's nothing passionate about a pair of shoes, right? You can buy any shoes, these are green, these are whatever, who cares? But when Tom Shoes said, whenever you buy a pair of shoes, someone that's never had shoes gets a pair for free, now they're suddenly aligning to something that they're trying to deal with, poverty. So there's always a way to tie it into your passion. I'll give you another example that's in the book. You walk past a construction site and there's 3 guys laying bricks. He asked the first guy, what are you doing? He says, I'm laying bricks. Second guy says, I'm building a building. And the third guy says, I'm making a house of God. They're building a church. The first guy has a job. The second guy has a career. And the third guy has a calling. And so here's a great example of that. 1 out of 3 Fortune 500 companies is founded by an immigrant or the first generation child. And why does that tie into what I'm talking about? When you see that immigrant working at a menial job, you know, whatever it is to pay and survive, that isn't their identity.
Right.
That is a stepping stone of a journey that started before they got here that isn't going to stop to wherever. That's passion that's pulling them through. Their passion is a better life for the next generation. When Disrupt You became a hit in Vietnam, I went over there and I was shocked. It was the happiest country I've ever been to. And I've been a lot of places.
Right. And
it didn't dawn on me until I started talking to the people that for the grandparents, they know that their kids are having a better opportunity than they ever had. And for their children, the next generation. And so there's an optimism that we don't have. And not talking politics, but when I saw what happened at our nation's capital in January, here's what I saw. I saw thousands of people feeling left out, left behind, fighting over leftovers. Remember, the bottom 140 million people in the U.S. own 1%.
Right, right.
They were hit hardest by what's happening during this thing. On the other hand, the 150 wealthiest people doubled their net wealth during the pandemic. Not what they earn in a year, their net wealth. And we still have a new billionaire made every 48 hours.
Wow.
So you can do it the Warren Buffett way. Amazing investor. He just hit $100 billion. But 99% of that he made after he was 50. I can tell you, I remember being younger. I would have had much more fun doing it the Kylie Jenner way, where she became a self-made billionaire at 22.
I know.
And you're going to say, well, but she's a Kardashian. Yeah, there's no billionaires in the Kardashians. So what did she do differently? Can it be taught? Can it be achieved again and again? Yes.
Yes. And so by reading this book, those are the traits that you're actually teaching in that book.
So you walk people through, if you want an acronym, MOVE: mindset, obstacle, void, and execute. It's that simple. And I go into more depth of how to do it, how to find the insight and a good idea. I have a 30-day program for that. And by the way, the best way to get the most out of either the book, Disrupt You or Future Proofing You, is I have workbooks. Because a lot of time you're reading, and oh, this is good, this is good, this is good. And at the end of the chapter, you go to the next chapter and the other stuff goes. Right. So the workbooks are free. I'm not selling anything. You can't buy anything from me. There's no upsell. If you go to my website, which is scrolling below,
right now.
You just click on the thing and we'll download the workbooks. And that way you can start making a plan. If you don't know where you want to be in 5 years, how are you going to get there? Okay. And to paraphrase, ancient philosopher, the trip of 1,000 steps just starts with one after another.
Right.
You don't have to know all the steps to know where you're trying to go, because you can work backwards from that goal. What do I have to learn as a skill? And I'll give you a great example from my past. So I came out of college, there's no jobs. And I had an epiphany when I saw a movie that came out called Star Wars. I go, oh my God, this is the greatest thing. I'm going to do Hollywood special effects. I knew nobody in Hollywood. I knew nothing about special effects. I didn't even have a computer, but that was my plan. But I knew I needed to figure out how to make that plan happen. So pre-internet days, I took out an ad in the Hollywood Reporter, a blind ad as if it was from a studio describing an entry-level job. Then I got in a bunch of resumes, and those resumes gave me 2 pieces of data.
Right.
One, what do I need to have on my resume to get that type of job? And 2, here's a whole bunch of people with 1 foot out the door, so I know what companies are going to be having openings.
That's brilliant, Jay. I mean, that really is brilliant. How did you know even to do that? Because that's not something that I think most of us think about, right?
I will teach you how to look at problems from a nonlinear way. So here's the corollary for the 21st century. A young man got his dream job out of college, wanted to be like a madman at one of the big 3 ad agencies in New York. Home run, he's happy until he shows up and he's in the basement in a cubicle, moving numbers around, nothing creative. he's seeing his future as a windowless, soulless existence.
Right.
And then he looks online and notices that the names of the biggest creative directors in the world, no one's bought those as keywords. So for $9, he bought their names. So when famous people Google themselves, it says, hey, I'd like to work for you. Click here to see my portfolio. 3 of the 5 called him in. All 3 offered him jobs, and he quintupled his salary and probably accelerated his career by 20 years for a $9 or a mocha Java Vente latte. So there is a way. You know, Colonel Sanders was broke on Social Security when he started in his 60s selling his recipe around the country. You know, so many companies are started at different ages. You can be a man, you can be a woman. And what we also learned in the pandemic, which is truth number 12 here, is we now have the advantage of remote workers.
Yes.
Throughout history, you were limited to hire the best people within 10 or 20 miles.
Right.
The best people in the world don't live within 10 and 20 miles of anybody.
Right.
Now you can hire anyone anywhere. You also don't need a big edifice with hefty rent. You don't have to live in an expensive city.
Well, look what's happening in Silicon Valley. Look what's happening in the tech companies. They're all moving out of there. It's too expensive, and they don't have to be there anymore, right?
And the biggest group pre-pandemic, the biggest group of travelers is no longer seniors. It's millennials. Why? Because they can be digital nomads. They can do their job anywhere. So you can do your job this month in Hawaii, next month in Thailand, go run with the bulls. You don't have to wait till you're old to explore the beauties and wonders of the cultures and places on this planet. So I also list the 20-something tools that are mostly free software to run virtual companies. And if you're intimidated, like I'm not into technology, yes, you are. You spend 5 hours a day with that phone.
Yeah.
You don't know how to make a plane fly, but you go on a plane. You don't know how to build a car.
Right.
So
exactly.
Get over that.
Exactly. We have a question from Gary Kipnis. Hi, Jay and Caren. So many people finish college with a strong sense of what they can't do. How can schools change that mindset?
So if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Okay? Schools aren't set up to instill a mindset of people to succeed. That's not their mission statement.
Right.
It is a broken model from a long time. We now have an entire generation that gets out of college with a mortgage, but not a house. So they're in indentured servitude for $1 trillion of college loans. Add on that $1 trillion of credit card loans. And if anything's going to make you feel like you're a failure, it's hitting an unfair world. If you're broke, it's not your fault. Wages have been stagnant since 1982 in the US. Let that sink in for a second. You know, we just printed a few $1 trillion to help out. All of that is, for people that aren't economists, is making money worth less.
Right.
Bitcoin, which I gave my first speech on back in 2015, when it was like, I don't know, $20. People aren't flocking to cryptocurrency because it's solid or they believe in it. They're flocking there because they no longer believe in fiat currencies from nations. It's going to crash. So the university model, I'm not knocking it. I teach how to build a high-tech startup at the largest engineering school. I did get in trouble because I often tell my students that suddenly have success, why are you staying here if you're making millions of dollars? Because that takes money away from the university, right?
Right. So Kim asked, does being content serve as a sustainable foundation or does it get in the way?
So psychologically being content, there's nothing wrong with that. If you can find peace on this crazy world, there's nothing better. For me, where I get the contentment and joy is in helping others. I believe the purpose of life is to live a life of purpose. So I will never be content until there's no problems to solve, no injustices to cure. But if you're content with your business and you say, I've got it figured out, the world is changing at faster than Darwinian rates, faster than we can adapt. Whatever got you to where you are will not keep you on that road. You will be roadkill. Right. I've watched 100-year-old companies disappear like that, okay? Right. And I've also sat in the empty room and watched an idea become $1 billion in 12 months. So you're going to have to commit to lifelong learning. And here is the biggest oversight of my first book, which was a chapter in this, and we talked about it pre-show. One of the 12 truths is don't fly solo. You cannot make it on your own. You will need a series of mentors. If the world is as dynamic as we know it is, as knowledge is as dynamic, you don't have time to constantly play catch up and learn everything new.
It's true.
But there are people that want to help you.
Right.
And let me explain why, if I can go down this rabbit hole for a second. Back to the educational question. In school, we were taught, Jay buys a banana for $1 and I sell it to Caren for $2. That's how I make money.
Right.
In game theory, that's called zero-sum game. The only money that can make is the money that's on the table. So in a poker game, you can't make more money than people brought, which means for me to get money, I got to be taking your money. So that means when he gets the raise, I don't get the raise, or immigrants are taking our jobs, or foreign countries are taking our jobs. You start having this dog-eat-dog miserable mindset. Here's how money's actually made. Okay, this is how you're able to become a billionaire and a millionaire so quickly nowadays. Caren, I'm starting a new company. I will sell you 10% for $10,000. You give me the $10,000. What do I now have? $10,000 cash and $90,000 in stock that didn't exist. I can hire people with that. I can buy things with that. I can do. That's how Jeff Bezos could lose money year after year after year after year for over a decade with Amazon and come out the backside as the richest man in the world. Entrepreneurs create wealth. They don't take it from somebody else. So if you're looking for a mentor, that mentor doesn't have a mindset of this person's taking from me. They're having, I learned things. It gives me validation. Why wouldn't I want to help? Because the pie is endless. There is abundance.
There is abundance.
And to find a mentor, because I get tons of emails, you don't cold out of the blue send an email or on LinkedIn go, hey, will you be my mentor? That's like walking to a bar and saying, hey, will you have my baby? It doesn't work, okay? But I will teach people how to find the like-minded people by what they post and what they do, how to start the dialogue. And you may have a lifelong mentor without ever using the M word.
So, okay, so we're talking mentors. Who are your mentors?
So I thought I had to make it on my own. My first company, I didn't have a board. You know, if they were so smart, why wouldn't they have started? Like I had this attitude in my 20s. You know everything when you're in 20s and you spend the rest of your life realizing you don't.
You don't know anything.
And to be transparent of how bad that was, I had a video game company, very successful. At one point, I had 7 of the top 10 games in the country back when video games were a small market. And another company offered me to buy my company for a third of theirs. I didn't have a board to explain that. I didn't understand all these things back then. That company, you know, is Activision, $18 billion. So yes, I lost $6 billion in my 20s due to arrogance. So my first mentor didn't come along until the music industry crashed. I was already known as the digital guy creating the first social network and first digital downloads and all these things. And the head of the biggest music company in the world called me in and said, I want you to run things. And I said, I know nothing about the music industry. And without missing a beat, his name was Ken Berry, said, I got 11,000 people that know the music industry. What I don't have is a future.
Yeah.
And so we developed a very amazing relationship, the only one I've had, where I could run into his office with a bad idea. He'd tell me why it wouldn't work. And then I could keep on going. And that's where Pandora comes out of. That's where internet radio comes out of. That's where all these experiments that we tried. So it was a great gift to get to work. And he, by the way, was Richard Branson's original partner. So he had that experience.
And when you were with Sony, you did the first in-stream up 30,000 feet in the air.
Concert in the sky.
Oh my gosh.
So one of my approaches to life is there's always other people's money. There's always some way that there are people that will give you millions of dollars that they don't want equity and they don't want it paid back. And you're going like, huh? So if you have a new idea or a new product, there's somebody else that wants to reach that same audience. You know, if your product is shoes for seniors, there's somebody that wants to sell glasses for seniors, whatever. Most likely, the other big giant company in the space has a huge marketing budget, but no new ideas. So if your idea can solve their problem, they deliver a customer. So I was tasked with an unbelievable thing. If you're old enough to remember the Walkman, Sony owned the world. iPod came along, Sony's dead. iTunes comes along, they're buried.
Right.
That's when they hire me, after it's too late. So I have to launch a competitor to iTunes. They're spending $100 million advertising iTunes. My marketing budget's $0. So OPM, I look, who in the world's having a bad year? First one that came to line was McDonald's. The second one was United Airlines that filed bankruptcy. So all that I have to do then, how do I take my idea, a music store, and connect it to McDonald's and United? So for McDonald's, I went to them and said, I can make you hip and cool again, get your sales up, buy a big back, get a free track. There's a little scratcher on each thing.
I remember
They
that.
made magnificent commercials, tray liners, bags, signs, greatest marketing company on earth. They delivered me 20 million paying customers to my store the first week. My marketing budget, zero.
Wow.
Part B is United wanted to show people were coming back out of bankruptcy. Well, they had enough loyal members that had frequent flyer miles to fly to Pluto 3 times or 7 times. And those were going to become worthless. Use your frequent flyer miles, this currency, you can buy any album, any song, anything you want. And to announce that, I had the idea, fill a plane with nothing but journalists, take off in Chicago. Sheryl Crow does a concert in the sky, first and only time this ever been allowed. 9-camera shoot, edited in first class, give everybody a DVD. So we lead all network evening news. And then that concert played in flight for every flight around the world for 30 days. Cost for me doing that, I gave her a TV and 2 pizzas. I love the fact that her rider says, and she's in perfect shape, when I get off the stage, there has to be 2 pizzas waiting in the green room. That's my kind of gal. And everything else United paid for.
That's awesome. We have another question from Blake Cornwell. Hey, Caren and Jay, longtime fan. Jay, what's some advice you can give somebody who considers themselves entrepreneurial but lacks the knowledge of where to take that first step to find their passion?
So you already have a passion. You already have a superpower. You just haven't focused on it. Think to yourself, and this is some of the steps in the workbook. When friends come to you for advice, what are they asking about? Like, nobody's ever come to me for fashion advice or organizational advice. It's not going to happen. Business model, yeah. So start looking at those things. And what problem, and I have a 30-day, 3 problems a day for 30-day thing that you do. What problems are resonating with you? So at the end of a month, if you do this exercise, you'll have 90 problems to choose from, and you'll sort those problems along 2 axes. One, what has the most people, right? Every time I teach in the university, there's always a kid that wants to do, well, I'm going to make food delivery to the dorms. And I'm like, okay, that's great. You have 200 potential customers. For the same energy, you could create Uber Eats. Like, what has the total addressable? Then the other axis is, what do you care about? Because if it's just to make money,
right,
it's going to die out. When I ran music companies, I noticed that the greatest musicians in the world, the big bands, everybody that you know, fell into 2 categories. Those that went in it for the fame, the money, the girls, or whatever, and some made and last.
Mm-hmm.
But there were these other ones that music poured out of their soul. They would go insane if they didn't express it, and even if you didn't pay them, they'd still be a world-class musician. And those people are the ones that have changed our lives.
Awesome. 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 So we have the book up on the screen again. I'm actually going to put it up here on Solo. You can go pick up a copy of it. Not now. Don't leave us yet. But the link is in the comments. But I want to say, but wait, there's more, because Jay, you are an accomplished watercolorist. I want to show and share some of your beautiful images that you've made. This is called Love on Parade. What were you thinking about when you made this?
So during the pandemic, I didn't get to see my granddaughters. And I would send pictures and do stuff like that. So it was my way of, what are we missing the most during it? So we talked about a growth mindset. I've painted and done art my whole life, but I didn't want to share that with my business world.
Right.
But when the pandemic started, I thought maybe we'll be locked up for 30 days, maybe 60 days. How can I find the silver lining? And the silver lining to me was I spent January of 2020 in 4 continents and 12 countries. I was now getting a gift of time. What do I want to do that I like? So I decided I would put up a picture a day, paint a painting every day about what was going on, what I was feeling through the pandemic. And I didn't expect that people would like it. I didn't expect to hear from galleries. I didn't expect that, fast forward in September, at a major gallery in New York, I had a solo show. I didn't get to go because of the pandemic, but now I am getting commissions to paint things. I'm a painter. I mean, this is crazy.
Well, and when I started following you, the first day that you put it out, it popped up on my screen, and every day I actually made a point to go see what were you putting out every single day. You're an amazing artist, and the fact that it appears that you push these out very, very fast. Your process of painting, you go and you do this, and as you said, it's in a gallery. It's the Richard Tattender Gallery, which presented your inaugural, I can say that 3 times fast, New York solo exhibition. It was called America Disrupted. And where can people go see these online?
Yes. So there's actually, I didn't give you the URL because I didn't know we'd go this deep. I do have a website of jsammetart.com, and there's jsammetart on Instagram. And it's really, I just expressed what I was feeling, we all shared these things. I showed a fog shroud cemetery where one of the angels steps off of the tombstone and she's weeping, and you see that she has the mask in her hand, and just, the New York City, one of their things is they don't want anybody to go to the parks. So not only could you not go to the parks, but they literally took the rims down off all the basketball courts. So I did a painting where you just see from the shadows of the players that aren't there, and you see this urban court, so it's how I stay sane. It's my therapy, it's my meditation, and I was just surprised that people connected with it, and I'm honored and happy.
It's beautiful, and I encourage people to go check it out at jsammetart.com to see. Literally every day you had another piece of artwork that you put out there. Do you have one tip? This is like off the beaten path. If somebody's a writer out there right now listening to this and they want to write a book, or they have written a book, or they're stuck, what's one tip that you could give an up and coming author?
About writing, about getting published? What aspect?
About writing a book. What? Just start? Yeah.
So the best advice that I got was picture one person that that you're writing the book for. Why would they read it? Why does it connect to them? So in my case, I was teaching these super bright students, and I had this one student that was so bright, but every idea he came up with for business was so bad. And I couldn't figure out, how do I communicate? How do I have to break it down? And that gave me the through line to write the first book. So know who you're writing it for. It's not about what you want, because you only write half the book. Right. The other half takes place in the other person's mind. So if you don't include them in your thinking of conceiving it, and that's for obviously nonfiction. I've got a lot of friends that write magnificent fiction books. I have no idea how they do that.
Well, you do the nonfiction very, very well, clearly. I am sure as you are watching this, whether you're here live or on replay, you're going to want to reach out to Jay to find out what he's doing. You can see him on his website at www.jsammet.com. You can also follow Jay on Facebook at j.sammet. You can follow Jay on Twitter at jsammet. You can also follow him on Instagram. Imagine that, at jsammet. And LinkedIn, we all can say it together, at jsammet. You also have a YouTube channel, which is different than the other, at jsammet channel. And I encourage everyone to go to Wikipedia and just search for Jay Sammet, because we didn't even go into most of the stuff that you've done, Jay. You're very humble, and so we really didn't do a lot of that. But I encourage people to go check you out. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I have learned so much from you. I have learned so much from you throughout the years. I want to thank all of you who joined us live, because we know that you have a choice as to where you spend your time. And I want to thank you for spending time with us today. We are eternally grateful. So I encourage you to go out, give somebody an awesome day, and I'll see you next time on the next episode